It's become pretty routine. Current and former State Department officials making their way to Capitol Hill, preparing to testify before Congress as part of the ongoing impeachment inquiry against Donald Trump. They've arrived one by one, briefcase in hand, flanked by teams of lawyers. And it made me think, who's on the hook, like financially, for all those lawyers and flights and hotel rooms? In some cases, I learned the officials are. It turns out that government officials are paying a literal price, up to tens of thousands of dollars out of pocket, for testifying in the impeachment proceedings. And that has some rank-and-file civil servants worrying about how they will afford to pay their legal bills if Congress comes knocking with a subpoena. Officials caught up in the impeachment of President Trump are in a tough spot. On the one hand, if they resist a congressional subpoena and refuse to testify, they can be charged with contempt. On the other hand, their employer, the White House, has told them not to testify in what President Trump has called an illegitimate witch hunt carried out by deep state actors.
This is an unprecedented situation. We've never had our people in this kind of situation before.
Eric Rubin is president of the American Foreign Service Association, an employee group that represents foreign service officers.
We're in uncharted waters, and we're trying to figure out the best way to navigate them.
Are you getting a lot of calls from government employees who are worried about maybe being asked to testify?
We are, from our members, from foreign service people. Yes, we are. People are finding themselves caught between directives from their employer, from the president, from the secretary of state or other agencies, not to appear before Congress. And then they're receiving legal subpoenas from Congress, which have the force of law. So they're having to make a decision which one to obey, which one to disobey. We have never had a situation like that. It's very scary. It makes sense that an official who's asked to testify would want the help of a personal lawyer. In fact, according to Eric, it's a necessity. It's considered a really bad idea to go into one of these hearings or depositions, even if you're not the person who's being looked at as a possible lawbreaker. But even if you're just a witness, you really need a lawyer in this kind of thing. But the thing is, those lawyers are expensive. From what I found, anywhere from $700 to $1,500 an hour. And even if lawyers want to work on such a high-profile case pro bono, they often can't, because current government officials are forbidden from accepting gifts, like free legal counsel. It's considered an ethics violation. Several former U.S. ambassadors told me that moving forward, even lower-level officials, say diplomats in Ukraine, could face all kinds of costs if they're asked to testify. They might have to pay for their airfare home or for temporary housing in D.C. When I started thinking about these costs, I wondered if some kind of insurance would cover them. In many cases, senior government officials do buy private professional liability insurance. But when I called around, insurance providers told me these packages really won't cover anything related to impeachment. When federal employees buy professional liability insurance, what exactly are they covered for?
There's three basic coverage areas. One is civil. So if they get sued in their personal capacity, it provides indemnity protection. The second one is what I call administrative investigations that could lead to any kind of job action. And then the third area is criminal investigations.
So for government officials who have professional liability insurance, are they covered if they are called to testify in these impeachment proceedings?
We've gotten a lot of calls, from foreign service officers who are, our Department of Defense officials who are caught up into this impeachment proceeding, or people who think they might. And it really sort of turns on whether you are a subject or a witness. It really needs to involve some sort of wrongdoing on your part, or a mistake is an easy way to look at that. And are you a subject or are you a mere witness? Now, the impeachment proceedings, the only known subject right now is the President of the United States, right?
So in a situation where, the president's conduct is under scrutiny and a federal employee is called in just as a witness to that conduct, professional liability insurance is not covering those costs.
Generally, I would say, when you're squarely just a witness, it's not going to cover those costs.
For career civil servants and foreign service officers who don't make huge amounts of money, the cost of testifying before Congress can be overwhelming, which is why the American Foreign Service Association is trying to raise some cash, asking for donations to help cover the fees.
It's our own version of maybe GoFundMe or something like that. Again, we haven't had to do this much ever, but we now have so many of our colleagues who are now caught up in this, again, not because they did anything wrong, but because they were witnesses, they participated in meetings, and now they have to go and do these lengthy depositions. And so we have gone out to our members and now the public to ask for donations to help with legal expenses for American Foreign Service people who get called into these hearings.
That seems sort of wild to me that we've got government officials who were called to testify in these incredibly important proceedings, and you are running an online campaign asking for small donations, a few dollars here and there to fund their lawyers. That's really surprising.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to emphasize these are public career civil servants, foreign service officers who don't have a lot of money usually. Some of our colleagues have had to give depositions which are closed before the House of Representatives. It is now clear that some of them will be called back for public hearings, televised public hearings. That obviously means the cost will continue. I can't give you an exact number because it depends on each person and how long it goes, but I think the phrase tens of thousands of dollars captures it.
As for the CIA whistleblower whose complaint about President Trump kicked off this whole process, we still don't know his identity, but we can assume that he's racking up legal bills too. This has led one nonprofit to set up, you may have guessed it, a GoFundMe campaign on the CIA officer's behalf, which has already raised nearly $250,000, helping to crowdfund one of the most important government inquiries in American history.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.